Thank you all for being here. It's going to be quite an experimental setting. I will do an introduction, as said, and Signe, who was also part of the reading group, will do her presentation, which is also linked to the theme, of course. And then we'll have a series of students, about 7, who will kind of unfold the ideas that we've been working with in this seminar. So it's been a collaboration between the Netherlands School of Media Studies. I come from Utrecht University, so we did most of the sessions over there. People from Sonic Act intervened. We had a session with Jennifer Walsh yesterday, which was also really intriguing. She's working on an opera, which has as a theme time, together with Timothy Morton. Some of you might know him. He's also an old guest of the festival. So this is kind of what's been on our minds. The title of this project nicely summarizes what we are interested in, what of art belongs to the present. So this was the whole crew. An experimental research lab, a close reading seminar that searches for how creation is produced in art and happens in thought. So there's really this input from thought, being philosophy, media studies, gender studies, what goes on in the humanities today, and contemporary art. We're often thinking about similar things. The way in which this is produced is, of course, slightly different. Yeah, these are the readings that we did. Also good to see some Delanda. The emphasis was very much on the work of Gilles Deleuze and on Michel Serres. It's also my main research interests. I've been writing books on these people. But the work of Borges was also very inspiring, and Virginia Woolf. We will come back to all of these texts later in this presentation, because all of the students kind of made their kind of transversal connections with these texts and with contemporary art. So it's this will be echoed in different ways in what is to come. So I'm not here to summarize everything that we read, of course, which is impossible, but also silly. These are very compact texts. They are very densely written. There's a lot of things going on there. And they can be read in many different ways. That's the definition of a good text. A good text has to have the ability to be read in many different ways. So that's also what we'll find out later. Main themes are important, of course. Where did we focus on? So that's actually what I'm going to do here. That's why I called it a short intro into how the text mattered. So in different ways, how they mattered. The openings they propose and how reading them forced us to think. Very important about this kind of collaboration, which cannot be said enough, I really like. I mean, we do in university. Well, in university, we're quite captured by the idea of knowledge and knowledge production and the piling up of knowledge. And we have to have all of these silly meetings where we talk about how one course follows on the other and all that. And that makes absolutely no sense at all. And everyone knows this, but this is kind of the game that we play. That also the university is kind of a knowledge factory. I guess we have to keep that up because otherwise we won't be funded anymore. So the nice thing about collaborations like this is we don't have to pretend that we build up knowledge or something like that. We are not interested in the sharing or in the transferring of knowledge. We have to work with these ideas. We have to see and feel what's going on. And that is where inspiration comes from. That's where thinking happens. And that is where creation, also in terms of art, takes place. So, and that is also, of course, the reason why I am unwilling and unable to summarize all of these texts into kind of a piece of knowledge which I transfer to you. So, coming from philosophy, I have a background in philosophy. Been teaching that for 20 years. Dealing with a concept like time means that you are confronted with a series of concepts. And concepts are not given, concepts have to be fabricated. And that means that you work with them. These are your tools. So when I have a title, which is What of Art Belongs to the Present, there's of course this idea of the present there. And the present is not simply kind of the here and now. The present is also a concept. The present is something that we have to conceptualize. What do we mean with the present? Do we mean kind of the economic, social and political realities that we are involved in and that we all try to escape? Do we mean something like the contemporary, which is also a concept which has been buzzing around these days? Everything that happens with the times, that's a translation of the contemporary. Personally, I like terms like the current and the undercurrent, because it's kind of a flow, and it's that part of the flow that you cannot see, or that is there, that you feel, but that you cannot really get a hand on. The undercurrent. So what of art belongs to the present? That's the kind of the question that we struggled with. Comes down to how can we think a different idea of time? How can we work with a different idea of time? And how can we accept that, especially in art, because this is not just something belongs to the present. What of art, what part of art belongs to the present and what does not belong to the present? So what part of art is unwilling and unable to subject itself to the present? That's, for us philosophers, a very important question. How does art resist, and how at the same time does it have to engage with whatever is going on? So 3 things that are linked to this. Art intervenes and breaks open the economic, social and political realities of the day. A word that came back in a series of texts that we read was the idea of the crack. There's a cracking up which takes place. In Deleuze's cinema books, there's a lot of writing on this. In the writings of Fitzgerald, there's also a very nice way of working with the crack. So what do they mean with the crack? So at the crack, art unveils a new future and a new history. How is art able to find a crack or to create a crack? That is something that cinema studies, for instance, is very much interested in. A crack of time. Yet it holds no present. This is Deleuze talking. It holds no present. It perverts a present. Its power is finite yet unlimited. So the power of art is not infinite, it's finite, it's quite small, but it is persistent, unlimited. It will not stop. And in that sense, it also has no present, which means that it is, in a way, it is ongoing. There's an immense force behind it which keeps on interfering, which keeps on resonating with the present. So 3 very important starting points for contemporary theory. So how do we deal with art in the readings of today? And this is also kind of scattered around in the text that we read. What of art composes its eternal truth? First point, art does not wait for the human to begin. It happens in a moment. So the old myth of the kind of divine inspiration, of course we've had that long ago, And that is why nowadays in theory we're interested in the moment, in how the present is being kind of challenged by art. So this is a way to work with this. Every artist, human and non-human, knows this, that you work and you create and you struggle, and then all of a sudden it's finished, it's there. And it's not because of your actions. This is a very sad message to art, I guess. It's not because of your actions, on the contrary. Only if you stop, it appears. Only if you stop, it appears. Only if you stop, you realize that there's something going on here. Second point, art is material, but it is not about objects. It has nothing to do with things. What I mean with that is that it cannot be reduced to an object. And in the moment it is being reduced to an object, it's over. Someone like Michel Serres has written quite a lot on the idea of the object, kind of as a misunderstanding. Objects have been installed to stop the time, he says, to prevent change from happening. From the totem in religion to money in nation-capitalism, its sole purpose is to protect those in power. That's why objects have been put up. Art has often been captured by the object in churches, in musea, perhaps even in art history handbooks. But in the end, the whole idea of the object suffocates art. Art has to kind of escape from the object if it wants to work, if it wants to mean something, if it wants to keep on intervening. Third point, art realizes a great health. This is a reference to Nietzsche, for those interested in references. This is the philosopher talking. A great health. Nietzsche was not talking about a great health in terms of kind of physical idealism, this is something that we all should strive for. A great health is much more important than that. A great health is a personal trajectory which you have to search for in order to find your best way of existence. So this search for a great health, this search for another earth which suits you better, is crucial for the way in which, in contemporary theory, art is being haunted. In what way can we search for a great health? One of the texts that we read was from Maurice Blanchot on Orpheus, rereading of the Orpheus myth and kind of finding out how this has a lot to say about art and how we deal with art. And Orpheus, we know the story from Orpheus and Eurydice. He's referring to this in this quote. It is only this that he has come to look for in hell. So Orpheus goes to hell to find his wife Eurydice, but he cannot look at her because then she'll stonify. It is only this that he has come to look for in hell. The whole glory of his work, the whole power of his art, and even the desire for a happy life in the beautiful light of day are sacrificed to this one concern, to look into the night at what the night is concealing, the other night, concealing which becomes visible. So a lot of different thoughts that kind of move around the room when you have reading groups like this, when you read through these various texts, and they have to do with what is the position of art, how can we get rid of the idea of an author, which we should have done in the 1960s already, but I mean, it's still something very persistent. So how can we think about art in terms of a present and a non-present, in terms of a moment of intervention? How can we get beyond the idea of an object, of a thing? So the kind of theory that we work with, for instance, is moving in a very different direction from object-oriented ontology. Perhaps you've heard of that term. It's also a very contemporary strand in thought, but there the idea of the object becomes very important. Whereas the text that we've read, the kind of ideas that we try to link to our work is very much in a different direction. So not about the object, not about a thing, but trying to see in what way art is able to materialize and to create resonances and relations within the different forms of the real without being captured by an object. So, yeah. So these are the different ideas that were kind of moving around. We had the pleasure that Signe was part of our whole project. So she has been negotiating with us, talking about the present and about the contemporary, about different concepts of time. And I guess your presentation now will resonate in many different ways with what has been going on in these seminars. So, yeah. You want to switch this up?